Drill, baby, drill.
Fossil fuels are making a comeback. OPEC's latest forecasts suggest global oil demand will keep rising, but the predictions are more politically driven than ever and often contradict each other. So how much weight should we give them? Back in 1960, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, and Venezuela founded OPEC, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. The goal was clear: coordinate production and push oil prices higher. The turning point came during the Yom Kippur War in 1973. On the holiest Jewish holiday, Egypt and Syria, backed by other Arab nations, attacked Israel. As a consequence, the Arab members of OPEC imposed an oil embargo. That was the trigger for the oil crisis, which led, among other things, to empty highways. Today, OPEC has 12 member countries. Its goals have changed little, keeping oil prices high and maximizing revenues. However, OPEC's influence has declined. That's why it cooperates with countries such as Russia, Mexico, Kazakhstan, and Oman. In that case, it's referred to as OPEC+. But let's return to the scenarios for global oil consumption. Once a year in February, OPEC publishes its World Oil Outlook. The organization expects global crude oil demand to rise to 122.9 million barrels per day by 2050. Only in OECD countries, Western industrialized nations such as the US, Germany, and Japan, is demand expected to peak in 2030 at around 46 million barrels per day. From then on, demand will decline. In China, oil demand is stagnating and will begin to decline slightly from 2045.
OPEC does have a political agenda in that it seeks to be a voice for the global oil industry, and in particular, the oil producers of its membership, which are in the global south.
Jeff Colgan is director of the Climate Solutions Lab at Brown University. He researches the international order in relation to energy and the environment.
Now, however, there's a lot more uncertainty around the future demand of oil because so many of the questions that really matter are inherently political, and they depend on the choices that our political leaders make about how fast to decarbonize their own economies.
OPEC's counterpart is the International Energy Agency. 32 industrialized countries are members, and 13 are associated. It was founded in November 1974 as a response by Western industrialized nations to the oil price crisis. The goal was to create a counterweight to OPEC. The International Energy Agency publishes its World Energy Outlook annually with different scenarios. According to the IEA, global oil demand will peak around 2030 at 102 million barrels per day and then decline. That stands in sharp contrast to OPEC's forecast. The stated policies scenario is based on today's political framework and also takes announced initiatives into account. For the global climate, this means a temperature increase of 2.5 degrees Celsius by the year 2100 compared to the pre-industrial era. To what extent is this scenario also political?
The oil industry, oil and gas industry, sees the International Energy Agency as having been captured by the green movement or the pro-renewables energy. And so these basic questions about forecasts of energy, which used to be strictly technical questions, have now become rather political.
Narendra Taneja, one of India's leading energy experts, goes even further.
So International Energy Agency's job, it is their job to look at the world, go for projections, make forecasts, make projections such a way that is in the best interest of the country that are member of the International Energy. Member means the founding members. India is also associate member. But International Energy Agency essentially works for the rich countries, for the rich people, for the rich societies, not for society like mine.
Forecasts change when the political agenda shifts, for example, in the United States. The most active oil basin in the world is in Lee County in the U.S. state of New Mexico. President Trump wants even more oil to be extracted there.
That is why today I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will drill, baby, drill.
He's issued further decrees to keep oil cheap and demand for fossil fuels high. That includes simplifying approval procedures for drilling on federal land. At the same time, he's frozen projects launched under Joe Biden, such as the Inflation Reduction Act, the largest climate protection fund in the U.S., which earmarks $369 billion for clean energy. Offshore wind projects have already been suspended. Columbia University has documented 283 initiatives introduced by the Trump administration since January 2025 that weaken or slow down climate protection.
Partly these are policy decisions like undoing much of the Biden administration's efforts to support green industrial policy. But more fundamentally, the Trump administration has been attacking the science and the basic governance institutions in the U.S. government that have fostered climate policy. So it's really a two-pronged attack in the United States. And of course, that has implications not only for U.S. environmental policy, but really some ripple effects around the world.
For example, it affects global shipping, which is particularly harmful to the climate. For now, there will be no international system for CO2 pricing and shipping. It was postponed indefinitely in October 2025, apparently after pressure from Washington on other members of the International Maritime Organization. Companies are also setting different priorities. In Rotterdam in the Netherlands, Shell had planned to build a large plant to produce sustainable aviation fuel. But the construction has been halted. Shell says the facility would not be profitable in the foreseeable future. Instead, it continues to rely on petroleum. The signs have changed. The ramp-up of alternative fuels is taking longer. Wind farm operators, too, are facing difficulties.
The fact that, say, interest rates continue to be higher today than they were back in 2020 or 2021 does have real implications for capital-intensive businesses like solar and wind and batteries. And so companies like the Danish wind manufacturer Ørsted are unfortunately facing all kinds of headwinds in a negative way, not just on the political side, but also on the economic side.
The IEA has responded. In its current policy scenario, oil demand continues to rise, likely even beyond 2050. The consequence for the global climate: an increase of 2.9 degrees Celsius in average global temperature by 2100. This scenario is meant to reflect current laws and regulations. It assumes these rules will remain in place until 2050, and that new technologies will spread only very slowly. Scientists are criticizing the IEA for reintroducing this scenario.
It's a politically motivated scenario.
Rachel Cletus is an economist and senior policy director at the Union of Concerned Scientists.
Now, in that scenario, there are a few things that are completely against market trends. One is, of course, the uptake of things like electric vehicles, renewable energy technologies like solar and wind, which are frankly the cheapest forms of energy now in most places in the world. So the market trends are already driving us towards these cleaner forms of energy use.
Nevertheless, in the IEA's current policies scenario, oil demand for cars and trucks remains largely unchanged. In air travel, demand for oil is increasing. Shipping remains nearly unchanged, while petrochemicals show a significant rise in oil consumption. Oil will continue to be needed as a raw material in the chemical industry for a long time. On this point, OPEC, the IEA, and other experts agree.
While the overall trajectory for oil demand is fairly stable, with a bit of growth in the next 5 years and then slow declines over the next couple of decades, the shift between sectors that will benefit from that demand is quite stark. You're moving away from oil utilization in the transportation sector and much more consumption for petrochemical uses.
Livia Gallerati prepares oil forecasts for the analysis firm Energy Aspects. But what role does India play, one of the fastest growing countries in the world? We're in Kashmir, in the city of Srinagar. 1.6 million cars are registered here. In 2008, it was less than half that number. Still, only 1 in 5 families owns a car. It looks similar in New Delhi. Across India, 5.2 million vehicles were newly registered in 2024. That's nearly 37% more than in 2019. And the vast majority of vehicles in India have internal combustion engines. India's strong growth is resulting in a huge appetite for oil. According to the International Energy Agency, India's oil demand in 2050 will reach 10.5 million barrels per day in the current policy scenario, the scenario in which today's laws remain in place indefinitely. The other scenario, the Stated Policies Scenario, or STEPS, projects demand at just under 9 million barrels per day. This scenario also takes into account political initiatives that have been announced but not yet enacted into law.
India today is actually driving the global oil market. If you look at the kind of growth and you look at the kind of hunger for oil in India, I think we probably are going to need, say by 2050 in the life of an Asian, like tomorrow morning, something like 9 million barrels of oil every day.
So when will global oil production reach its peak? Here's a recap. OPEC assumes that global oil demand will continue to rise even beyond 2050. The International Energy Agency, at least in its stated policies scenario, expects oil consumption to peak around 2030. Who's right?
Both are wrong. You see, International Energy Agency is an agency of the developed countries. International Energy projection that by 2029 demand for oil will peak is not scientific, it's motivated. So I don't buy it.
However, since renewable energies have become so much cheaper in recent years, a peak in oil demand around 2030 is not unrealistic. The shift, especially towards photovoltaics, is likely to gain even more momentum soon, simply because it makes economic sense. So, what do you think?